What's going on, football fans? It's me, J.R. Clark, back again with another pound for pound ATL. Tonight we're going to be talking about second round pick Troy Anderson out of Montana State. We're not going to be talking about just his athleticism. That we've talked about that ad nauseum, I think, at this point. You know, the fact that he was player of the year in 3 different positions. You can see his stats on the screen from the season. Tonight we're going to be talking about how does he fit? How does he fit in this scheme? How does he fit in this room? How does he fit on this team? So let's kind of get into that, right? Last year, you ran a lot of 4-2-5 is what Dean Pease ran a lot of. And he ran probably more cover 2 than I think he's ran anywhere else that he's been. And I think that was, due to the necessity of the players that he had on staff. You have Foye Oluokun and Deion Jones as your primary linebackers. You have Michael Walker, but he was still young in his NFL experience. And as we know at this point, Dean Pease is an old school coach, and he likes his, experience. He doesn't necessarily want to throw guys out into the fire until he feels like they're ready. Now, with that being said, I think this offseason has proven a philosophy shift in a sense. And what I mean by that is, like, last year I feel like both on offense and defense, they had to ended up cobbling together a squad. Okay? You lost your receivers. You didn't have any money to necessarily upgrade anybody. So you did an evaluation and you went with what you had. Well, after that evaluation, Dean Pease, I feel like, went into Fontenot's office, went into Smith's office and said, okay, I need bigger linebackers. I need linebackers who can fight through an offensive guard to get to the running back. I need guys, as any of y'all have ever heard Dansky talk enough, where he says, I need guys who can fill a gap. Like Foye did a very nice job for us last year, but even him at 227 wasn't the size that Pease was looking for. I mean, it's relatively evident if you look at, now I'm going to be looking over here, so don't get crazy with me. Rashaan Evans is 6'2", 232. Michael Walker, 6'2", 230. Today, we just signed Nick Kwiatkowski, former Raider and Bear, who stands 6'2", 242. Now, you go back and look at Troy Anderson. I'll throw it back up there real quick so y'all can see it. Troy Anderson is 6'4", 236. This fits more the mold of what Dean Pease is wanting. Dean Pease is wanting a bigger linebacker who is aggressive enough to fill the gaps. Now, I think with the signing of Nick Kwiatkowski today, and I know I'm butchering that man's last name, so y'all just have to forgive me. I'm not good with names. I think with the signing of him, really forecast that I don't believe Deion Jones is going to be here. I just really don't. I didn't put him on the thumbnail because I'm not necessarily I could be totally wrong by season starts, but I don't think Deion Jones makes it to camp, to be completely honest. I think that his effort last year at times was lacking, and I think his want to was lacking. So you add that with the fact that he's an undersized linebacker in a Dean Pease scheme that wants to be more physical. I think that does end up spelling the end for Deion Jones in this system, in this scheme. But that's enough about him. We've talked about that quite a bit as well. So let's talk about some of the things that Troy Anderson brings and how I think he's going to fit. This year, I honestly think, even though he's a second-round pick, this staff has already shown the propensity to not want to rush defensive players out onto the field until they feel like they're ready. You saw that last year with Richie Grant. Now, Dean Pease's back end coverage is a good bit more complicated, I think, than the front end, but nonetheless, with such a raw player that Anderson is, and what I mean by that is he has played 3 different positions. That means he hasn't settled into one position and really honed a craft yet. So he's still very raw at linebacker. Now, he's ultra athletic and he's very smart, and that helps out a ton. You can see that when you watch the film. There was a play at 4th and 1. He's in his middle linebacker position, close to the goal line. It's in the semifinal game. I'd show you, but again, as y'all know, we get dinged for, putting up clips, so I can't really show you. But the play comes in and everybody collapses, and Anderson is like he's surveying everything, and he sees that the running back is bouncing it outside. So like he scrapes across the back of the D line and makes a tackle for loss at a critical 4th and 1 early on in the game. I mean, that could have been a big momentum swing. So his intelligence really aids him in his play. Like what he lacks right now in like linebacker skill or linebacker experience, he makes up for in just almost raw intelligence. Like you can see it a lot, like when he's shooting a gap, in a sense, like he's guessing, like because he has that experience as a running back himself, he's guessing what hole he would hit. And a lot of times he's right, but a lot of times he's not. So I think that's as he plays that linebacker position, as he grows in that position, I think he's going to be a force to be reckoned with. So what I'm trying to do is like mentally prepare y'all for, I don't want to hear that, oh, Troy Anderson's a bust after next year or after this season. Because I honestly think that this year what you're going to see Troy Anderson is on special teams a good bit. And in, the 3 linebacker packages, especially later on, depending on how he picks up the system, how he picks up the scheme. Kind of like the way we used Mykal Walker last year. I can see them doing that quite a bit with Troy Anderson. Like obvious passing downs, getting him out there and letting him sit back in a zone and telling him, okay, look, anything that comes in this area, this is yours. Again, I think you're going to see a fair amount of the 4-2-5, but I do get a feeling that we may actually play with a little more 3 linebackers this year than we did last year. With bringing in Katowski, you have Mykal Walker and Rashaan Evans. Those are, I think, if I had to call it right now, I think those are your 2 starting linebackers. Mykal Walker and Rashaan Evans, because definitely Evans fits the mold of what Dean Pease is looking for, a physical downhill running back. And Mykal Walker, every time he stepped on the field last year, he was doing something good and making good plays. I think another year in that system, you're going to see him blossom. But I believe Troy Anderson is the opportunity not to necessarily have to break the bank to sign Rashaan Evans next year if you don't want to. Or if I think this will be like you're going into the 3rd season with Mykal Walker, Anderson could be a long-term replacement for him if they don't feel like they're going to be able to re-sign him. I'm just forecasting and guessing there. Not saying that they're not going to. But I do think this spells the end of Deion Jones here. I think his size and his style of play doesn't lend itself to what Pease is looking for. He wants somebody who's going to like wrap up and tackle and meet folks in the hole. And there's plenty of examples of Deion Jones just like half-heartedly trying to tackle. And if he was hurt last year, maybe that was the reason. And I could be wrong, and we're talking about the resurgence of Deion Jones, but I just don't see it, especially not with them going out and drafting a physical freak, a Weapon X kind of player that Troy Anderson presents. He's raw. He's like a ball of clay, a lot like Devondre Campbell was when he came out. Devondre was very raw in his skills, and now, it took him a couple stops, but he finally got his feet under him, and he's an all-pro out there in Green Bay. I think I think Troy Anderson could follow that same kind of arc, but hopefully just here. Hopefully he develops quicker. I mean, the valedictorian of his high school, that shows his intelligence there. So you really hope that he can just pick up the playbook quickly, and by midseason, he's forcing himself out there because of his play and his practicing. But I think early on it's going to be, a special teams type situation. But when you really look at this linebacker room as a whole, I think you have a much more physical presence than what you had last year. And I think that's going to translate to, better run defense, hopefully more like forced fumbles. And I think you're going to see a lot more blitzing, which is what Dean Pease likes to do with his linebackers. You go back and just look at how many sacks and stuff. Let's just, for craps and giggles, I've got Rashaan Evans pulled up here. Rashaan Evans got 3 sacks, which isn't bad. And Nikowski has a grand total of 7 sacks. So I can definitely see Dean Pease getting back into that, that filling those gaps and shooting those gaps with these fast, athletic, physical linebackers that he's building around. Well, that's all I got for y'all tonight. I think the schedule came out. We start off with New Orleans, and we end up with, start off at home with New Orleans, and then back-to-back road trips with Los Angeles and Seattle. So it's a tough schedule. We all know that. What I'm really hoping for is that we're far more competitive this year. I don't know if I necessarily want to give wins-loss totals, but right now, I'm just looking for an overall more competitive team. I want them to be in more of these games. I don't expect them to win many, but I want them to be competitive, and I'd love to see this defense take a step forward, which I think it can with this linebacker group that they're putting together behind this really big defensive line that we're going to be trotting out there. I really hope that aspects of it, starts to really come together and, produce some pressures that I know Dean Pease wants to produce. As always, folks, y'all can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Grimm1128, GRIMM1128. Follow Toby D at TobyD1991. Keep your eye on the channel as we do lives, videos like this, and just all around try to have a lot of fun. And as always, Falcons fans, rise up.